What is up? What is the deal, everybody? It's your boy, Coach DP, man, and we're on episode 9, I believe, of the Perkins Project, man. I appreciate everybody who's been going through this journey with me. And y'all see, I brought my boy Marcus back.
What it do? What it do?
And I got another special guest for y'all, probably my favorite guest that I've had so far, man. This person, I would say, in my opinion, and a lot of people, if you know any of the fighters, anything like that down here, man, he is the top announcer and personality in the Metroplex, man. This is Antonio Perkins. I want to give you a chance right now to, how can the people follow you on Instagram, Facebook, or even YouTube?
So you can follow me on Come On In, Pototron Network on Spotify. And you can go to YouTube, and it is titled Inside the Life of with Antonio Perkins. Instagram, Antonio_XKO, and Antonio Perkins on Facebook.
So getting right into it, for the people that never met you, they don't know you, who is Antonio Perkins at his core?
You know, I would say being a Perkins...
Yeah.
Being a Perkins, man, I think is the forefront. You know, it's a strong name. I think to myself, man, my sister, but we've been friends since we were 16. She came into town one time and she said she no longer goes by a title. And I've adopted this title that she now says is, so she no longer says she's a Christian, she's a Christ follower. And so that's what I hope to accomplish, man. I mean, Denzel said it best. Like, look, he said, God is always walking with us, even though we're not close to him all the time. And so that's what I try to hope to treat people as best I can. You know, try to treat people, no matter what walk of life they are. I want to treat people with respect, integrity, and dignity. I think that's what I want to try to accomplish and be known for, to me, to my core. You know, whether it's my wife, family, friends, strangers. I'd say that's who I am. I'm a guy that's just trying to be as good. Not a nice guy, because you don't want to be a nice guy, because you have to do some unnice things for the greater good. So I want to be a good guy.
So let me ask you this. And so, growing up as a kid, we all had different things that we wanted to do, all different things that we love to do. For me personally, I tell everybody, when I was 4 years old, I watched wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to be a wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
As a kid, how did you envision yourself as you grew up?
You know, both my parents were Navy, so my mother and my father were both Navy. My mother was a corpsman in the Navy, chief petty medical officer. My father, my actual father, did ordnance. So if you know anything about the military, he installed explosives. My stepfather was the chief of the catapult on an aircraft carrier. So my whole life, man, I was like 5 years old doing 3/4 folds on underwear and T-shirts. So anybody who's in the military, they know what 3/4 folds are. You know, my bed had to be dress. Growing up in a household of structure and discipline, you know, I wanted to, and being an only child, that set the kind of the parameter of your imagination takes you wherever you want to go. You know, I had to entertain myself a lot of the times, you know. And so for whatever the reason, man, my mom and my dad bought me this Fisher-Price recorder, and I would literally record commercials.
Wow.
Go in my room and repeat the commercial back. It was weird, man. I was that kind of a kid where I just, because when you're an only child, you got to entertain yourself.
Yes.
So, you know, I just got used to the sound of my own voice. And so I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a firefighter. I wanted to be a pilot. You know, these were things that I wanted to be. A race car driver. You know, being a kid.
Right.
But, you know, watching wrestling like you did, the WWF.
Man, yeah, exactly.
Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Kabuki, you know, all that stuff.
Von Erichs.
The Von Erichs, man. So I grew up in California. You know, I was born in Bethesda, Maryland, grew up in California, grew up in Hawaii. And so, you know, I was grateful to be a kid. You know, you mentioned wrestling. Kids these days don't even have time to be a kid. Politics determines who and what they are. It's like kids can't even be kids anymore.
Man, you just said something a while ago that, man, I don't think a lot of people would understand. You said you were only child. You had to entertain yourself.
Yeah, man.
But in a lot of situations when it's just you and you're the only child, you kind of come up, the parent doesn't have anybody else to spoil. But
I was spoiled, yeah.
But it's weird. That's weird to me because you're one of the most consistent people I know.
Yeah, thank you.
So I would go to the gym, whether it be 24-hour fitness or even just every XKO event, you're there. You know, a lot of things that you do, I would perceive as this person is loyal and he's extremely consistent. And people would say those are traits that you wouldn't get from an only child because an only child, as you say, they're spoiled. They get the things that they want. They don't learn and they don't learn consistency. They don't learn how to be a dog and get things done. Did your parents instill that in you, or did that kind of just come like? How did you learn how to be consistent and disciplined?
It was definitely discipline, and consistency was just definitely part of my upbringing. I mean, you know, when my mom and my father divorced, it was just the two of us. And my mom remarried, and then she divorced, and it was the two of us. And so since I was probably 7, maybe 7 and 8, on to now, it's just been my mom and I. You know, outside of my grandparents and cousins and whatnot. But I was the type of kid, my mom would come in, I would go to my playroom, man, when I was a kid, I have all my toys in my toy box, and my mother would walk in and she would say, all right, Tony, when you're done playing with your toys, you got to put this away. And her favorite thing was to say was a place for everything and everything in its place. And so as a kid, I was free to be a kid, but understand I was under the umbrella of a military lifestyle.
Right.
So basically my whole life has been a boot camp, man. You know what I mean? So that's where structure came in, and you know, I credit that to my mother, who instilled that to me. I mean, whether it was making your bed first thing in the morning, you're a kid, get dressed, make your bed, come down for breakfast. You know, step and repeat. And
that's good. I was gonna say it's crazy you said that because I went through the same thing as a child. Like my mother had my father, obviously, and then they got married, and they ended up getting divorced, and then she got married again, and then they ended up getting divorced. And it was always just me and my mom. But I actually had I got 3 younger brothers, but they stayed with my father.
Right.
It was just me and my older brother who kind of was like together because we were only like 1 year apart, and it was just us two and my mom. And I'm trying to think like how that affected me growing up, and in your situation where it's like, I'm the man of the house. Then somebody comes in. Well, I got to be back the man of the house again. How do you feel like that affected you growing up?
You know, I mean, I didn't have a very close relationship with my real father. You know, that was a very abusive relationship that my mother was in. You know, there were pictures that I look at today of all of us in a picture. Everybody's in their naval uniform, and my mom, she explains in the picture, I wasn't tired. I had a black eye because your dad hit me in the face. And so she had to use makeup to cover it up because she was getting an award in the picture. She wasn't tired. I was like, whoa.
Wow.
And as an adult, I'm hearing this and I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
And so that's the reason why she separated from that relationship. And my stepdad, you know, it was, him and I got along great, you know, and it was structure, you know, and so, but ultimately they got divorced. But I've always had positive male role models in my healthy, positive role models. My grandfathers, my uncles, those were always in my life. So I was always raised with good, strong male figures, you know, that love God, that were seeking God, seeking how to do things the right way as well. So I never had that unbalance. But to be the man of the house, I mean, shoot, I mean, you try to tell that to a Navy corpsman,
Right.
especially in the 80s where being a woman in the military in the 80s and in the 70s, man, it isn't anything close to today. You know what I mean? She paved the way for a lot of women in what she went through. She was looked down on, you know, not literally spit on, but, you know, but it was just to be a woman in the 80s, in the 70s, and going into the 90s in the military. I mean, that was a hard life. And so she came home and brought that home. My mother and I had a conversation years ago, and she said, you know, I think that I was a little hard on you. And she said, I kind of think back that I wasn't compassionate enough with you. And so my whole life, it was tough, man. Like she built me into being somebody who was hard-nosed. And so you talk about consistency at XKO, you know, it's early to rise, early to bed. You know what I mean? A term in the military is, and I never served, but you would think I did, right?
Right.
But consistency came out of me being growing up with, to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late is unacceptable.
Same way. My grandfather did me the exact same
Yeah.
way.
What and story is pretty similar. Most single parent mothers have to play their dual role.
Oh yeah.
Of knowing how they already know how to be women,
Right.
but they're trying to figure out how do I raise this boy into a man when there's the absence of male presence in the home. Yeah, we may have father figures or male role figures outside of the house, but it's a different seeing it every day in a home.
Oh, it is.
Let's walk this structure of life that you was brought up in, because your mom was military, dad and stepdad was military, and so we know that there's benefits.
Oh yeah.
Of discipline, but I want to talk about your teenage years.
Oh man.
Of the challenges, because I say challenges because I know I was a drug baby.
Yeah.
Drug
I'm
to
sorry,
church,
man.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I know
early
that.
on in my early years,
Yeah.
I didn't want to go, but I went because I had to. You know what I mean? And it was fun. You got to sing in the church choir and stuff like that. Going church.
You gonna
field
throw it back
trips.
for us? You gonna take it? You gonna take it back for us a little bit?
Yeah.
Come on now, you can bring a hymnal in here, man.
But the challenge of discipline going to church, I noticed the challenge when I got in my teenage years.
Oh yeah.
When I began to interact with unchurched kids, I began to desire to go other places that they went, that I knew my mom wasn't supportive of me going. So I say that to say, in your teenage years, what were the challenges of a disciplined home life?
The thing is, so you were drugged to church. I mean, that's my whole family. I look back on it now and I'm really blessed, man. My grandparents, my mother, just church was our foundation. We were going to church Wednesday night, how it is, Saturdays, sometimes Fridays, 2 times on Sunday.
Yeah.
And so that was always instilled in me. I would probably say my teenage years at this point, I was living we had just moved from Sacramento, California, to Ohio, and that is a culture shock. Because I grew up in Oakland. It was rough back then, but I grew up in the Bay Area in California, and so going to Ohio, the Midwest still is that what's considered?
Considered so,
dude. It was like somebody just dropped me off in no man's land. I'm like,
man,
what are cowboy boots? What are these tight jeans? And what is flannel? What is flannel even?
right?
And so we went from a Raiders, Oakland A's kid to this. And so I was 13.
It is a big jump.
It is. I did not adjust well. Got in a lot of fights. But, I was 13. At this time, the reason why we had moved, my father had just been murdered.
Ooh,
my biological father had just been murdered. And so I was 12 years old. My mother never told me about the relationship that they had, the abuse that was in that marriage. She said, I want you to meet your dad and you draw your own conclusion for him. And I'm 12 years old. So I go to meet my dad.
That's interesting.
And, he's a handsome dude. He was a boxer, Golden Gloves. Doesn't help the situation with him being abusive.
Right.
And he was, and he was, at this time, he had left the military. He was he was working as airport security. That's back when they had a suit and tie and a
Right.
before
Looked
TSA.
like Secret Service.
Yeah. So he's, wide-eyed. He can't wait to meet me. He's a stranger to me, but he's my dad. And he's just green eyes, light-skinned dude. Just women loved him. And he was a woman's man. Yeah, women loved him. And so I spent my summer getting to know my dad. And, he was deep into drugs, deep into womanizing.
This is when you met, like after you met him.
Yeah, I met him at 12. Yeah, I spent the summer with him when I was 12. And every other night that we would go out, it was to go buy weed, go buy dope. And I'm learning, he's teaching me how to know what this is and what that is. And I'm like, street knowledge.
Shut up.
But I never in my life ever smoked weed, ever. Right. Because of that, I never did. And so here it is. I'm 12 years old. I meet my dad for the first time. Not the best experience, but he didn't know how to be a dad either. So I can't really fault him.
Right.
He didn't know what he was doing. So he was a great guy, fun guy, terrible dad, but he didn't know how to be a dad. So 13 years old, we moved to Ohio to be closer to my dad's family because we had just found out that he was murdered. He was buying drugs. His drug dealer tried to carjack him, shot him, and killed him.
Wow.
So my mom wanted me to be a part of his side of the family, get to know the family. That's why we moved there. 13 years old, I had anger issues. I lost my dad, this guy who I just met, and I acted out. And my mom didn't really know how to handle that. She just knew how to tighten down. So I was 13, moving to Ohio. I was always getting in fights in school because I didn't know how to adjust to what was around me. I had some pretty good friends. I mean, it was a normal kid playing ball, but then it was that line that I wasn't really prepared for because California was very diverse. Ohio, it was not. It was just black and white, and that was it. And people didn't know what I was. And so my teenage years were very different. So I would go play ball in Ohio. The black kids were like, well, you're not really black all the way, so you're not Hispanic. What's going on? The white kids were like, well, you're not really white. You're not Hispanic. What's really going on? And so it was really difficult for me to make friends based on that. But I was like, still, I'm going to do me. I'm going to come out there. And that's where I had to build a tough skin. And so for the kids that were accepting, black, white, Hispanic, and otherwise, I was building friendships. Okay. For the others that didn't want to accept who I was, I got in fights. And I was a small kid, so you know how that goes. So my teenage years were very much of a lot of a balancing act. Got back into church, went to like private school, got back into church, and that was probably the best thing for me. It got me out of the fights. I got assimilated into just like-minded people, and it didn't matter what I was on the outside, And so I grew up without any animosity.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean? I could have.
No, easily.
And it's easy to play that victim role because you watch politics and social media today.
Everyone.
I'm a victim because of how I was raised and this and that. And it's like, dude, somebody who treated you bad when you were a kid and a teenager, formative years, and you could either go become a criminal or you could become a stand-up person in society. I
always had that fork in the road.
It's that fork in the road, right? So you mean to tell me because you went to a school and you were picked on by this demographic of people or persons, now you're gonna walk around with a chip on your shoulder as an adult? Come on, man, really?
Man, you said something. So you were 12 years old when your mom, and everything you said about her has been stand up.
Oh, like, she's awesome.
She's literally gave you most people would feel betrayed and take a person out of a situation completely. She told you, I want you to form your own opinion. Now, she could have been doing that saying, you're going to see for yourself.
Pretty much, bro.
But just to backtrack just a little bit, I want to know the day, okay, you're 12, he's murdered by the time you turn 13. You find out, you hear about it. What's your immediate emotion?
Oh, I was watching TV in the living room. I know it's very clear as day. I'm watching, it's in the evening. I'm home from school. My mom picks up the phone. Immediately she starts crying. And I'm looking at her and I know something's off. It's not like a typical cry. Something's off. And she said, she was telling, I got to tell you something. I was like, I was just talking to your grandma, and it's almost like I knew. It's like almost I knew. And she said, your dad's been murdered. And I kind of sat there and I was just like, you're 13 years old. How do you take that? He's your dad, but you don't know him as your dad.
Right.
But I was mad because somebody was taken away from me right when I'm starting to establish that connection. It would be different if I was 18 and him and I were able to establish a father-son bond over a course of 5 years. You know what I mean? But it's like from the jump, so I never even got a chance. It's like you got a taste and then it's taken away.
What Tupac say? He said, my father died and I couldn't cry because I couldn't cry for a stranger.
Yeah.
Man, that's amazing. Let's jump ahead a little bit. Let's talk about XKO.
Yeah.
All right.
That's always fun.
Yes. For me, and I think anybody else that knows, you're, like I said again, you're one of the most recognizable voices in the Metroplex when it comes to combat sports in general. You've been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, you were around this organization in the beginning. What do you see as XKO's full potential?
Oh, I think that it's endless. I think very easily with the right backing financially, I think that we could be in Vegas. I think we could be worldwide. I think that what we bring is a connection to fighters and fans.
Agree.
I call him my brother, but he was my Puerto Rican brother from California. Every time he would fly in to watch XKO, he said, dude, for a small local promotion, nobody builds up the fighters like you guys do. You know what I mean? You expect to see that on the Bellator and UFC level. You know what I'm saying? And so the full potential of XKO easily, I think with the right financial backing, I think we could be competitive to the UFC in the sense of the connection that we put into the fighters and what we bring to the fans. Because, when you fought for us, and if you look at some of, and it was in the early days,
right?
If you look at some of the ways that you were promoted through XKO, you would have thought this is a prize fighter.
Yeah. And I always said I appreciate Thomas because I believe maybe my very first fight for XKO, he made me the main event.
Yeah.
And right after that one, like, I got pushed through the roof.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because it wasn't just pushed through the roof for XKO. My name got out there on a lot of different levels. And I'm like, I always appreciate Thomas for that because it helped my career go down a certain path.
Right.
That it probably wouldn't have gone on if I'd have just been the first. He took the time out to do that. So I ask you, in general, what made you choose the Bussey family, I would say, to be loyal to?
It's crazy, man. So a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people only know Thomas and Chris and their dad and I working with XKO. But we were a family of friends and working together years prior. So I think when XKO hit the scene, I think it was around 07, maybe 08, somewhere around that. But I started working with them in 2003. So they had their own professional independent wrestling company in Arlington. And so it was on UPN.
Tell me that.
It was on CW or UPN. It was on UPN 21. And so in 2003, I came in because my boy Lance Hoyt, you can see him on AEW Wrestling. He's still on the active. He's the Murder Hawk Monster. So him and I were friends, and he said, look, man, you got a great voice. I want you to go to this wrestling company, knock on the door and tell them Lance sent you. I went there. We had a Friday night. It's called the PCW Uncut. It wasn't televised, and it was for guys, men and women, to break into the wrestling business. You know what I mean? Like 10 people would show up. It didn't have all the lights and the camera.
Right.
It was just very underground. And so I went there, I announced for quite a while, about a year or two. Then we did a show called Freakers Ball, 97.1 The Eagle put on. Marilyn Manson was headlining. Our main announcer was running late. We had to start the show, and I was already there, dressed up and ready to go for the uncut crowd.
Right.
Well, we had like 25,000 people that were watching Marilyn Manson. Our ring was set to the side for like side entertainment.
Wow.
Antonio, get in there. We need you to start.
Right place, right time.
Right place, right time.
That's crazy.
And they said, man, you held yourself well. You did a great job. We're putting you on the Saturday live TV show. I said, okay. So they introduced me as a character. A character, dude. I was the general manager. I got my butt whooped because I was a good guy. I was a face.
Bro, that is so crazy because that is something that, first of all, I would always want to do. But when you said that, it made me, I could so see you as a GM or when the people
like Teddy Long.
A Paul Hayes, or a
like
Teddy Long.
Or Jonathan Coachman.
Yes.
Yep.
That'll be perfect for you. Mm-hmm. Man, I really want to, let's go and talk about the day that changed your life.
Oh, yeah, man. That was crazy. I still remember it vividly.
And that's exactly what I want to go to. But before we talk about it, man, I want to glorify Jesus Christ in this moment because
absolutely.
Man, I prayed so hard when I first heard, and I heard immediately. And I know I'm not the only one, but a lot of people prayed. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like he came through in that moment, and he answered all of our prayers, man. And from my perspective, like, I don't even know if I slept that night. I was just like trying to check on you. Thomas would tell me just hold on, or whatever. He would try to update me as much as he could. But from your perspective, how did that your view of that day?
You know, it was like any other day riding. It was January. The weather was nice that weekend in Texas. You never know what you're going to get for the weather. My wife told me not to buy the bike. But I've been really eyeballing this bike. My buddy who owned it, he never rode it. He just said, I said, if you ever sell that bike, sell it to me. And my wife was like, I don't have a good feeling. Don't buy it. I'm like, babe, it's all good. I thought she was just being vindictive because I already had a Harley. She has her motorcycle, and I wanted to put a third one in the garage so I could have my cruiser and my sport bike. And so she was like, I don't approve of it. And I was like, well, I'm going to buy it anyway. And any men out there, just trust me, your wife, God puts our wives in our lives for a reason because God will speak wisdom through them to us.
Right.
When he tries to speak to us, he'll ignore it. In this case, I still ignored my wife, and I shouldn't have.
Right.
And so that's why, our wives are called our helpmate. They're supposed to help us navigate through life. So I bought the bike. I had just got it out of the shop. My buddy went through the whole thing, just getting all the wiring and all that done, which is crazy because when I bought the bike, dude, my buddy lives up in Frisco.
Right.
My wife is training for Southwest, so she wasn't home that week, and I was like, "Oh, perfect opportunity!"
Yeah,
right?
he's that. Yeah.
Yep. And so I Ubered to my buddy's house, pick up the bike. He's like, "All right, man, well, I got fresh gas in it, this, that, and the other. Here you go. Put the helmet on, put my jacket on, and I ride from Frisco. Everything felt good. The bike felt good. I get to DFW because that's just the way I went to go home to Mansfield. Right when I got through DFW, the display went out. Like the heads-up display on the motorcycle went out. I'm like, that's weird. So I keep going, get by Six Flags. The bike stalled out, and I'm in traffic. The bike stalled, just cut out. So I'm like, wait a minute, what's up? So I was coasting into the shoulder, put it back in neutral as I'm moving, restarted the bike, fired right back up. Okay. But I have no speedometer. Like all my digital gauges went out. I'm like, okay, what's up with this? Literally, I was 3 blocks from my house at a stop sign. The bike completely died. I had to push this thing in the middle of the summer heat.
Oh my gosh.
To my house. 3 blocks. Oh, I was mad. Turns out that the fuse burnt out. The starter fuse burned out. Anyways, I got all that fixed. I get the bike back. The night of the accident, my buddy, he rides a Ducati. We were riding to a restaurant, get a bite to eat, just to ride. It was a nice, cool night, right? And so we rode there, and I said, hey, man, let's go ride to Dallas. Just go through Deep Ellum. There's some, pretty tight murals. I don't know, man. I don't know. It turns out, apparently, I convinced him to go.
Right.
Apparently, we were just going to go get something to eat and ride home. I messaged my wife. I said, hey, babe, do you want me to come home, or can I just get a little bit of ride time in? She goes, you know what? It's the end of the week. It's Friday night. Go ahead. Just ride a little bit and then come on home. All right, cool. Ride to Dallas, go through Deep Ellum, take some pictures of the bikes, and then for some reason we're riding back. We usually take 30 to 161. This particular time, we're taking 35 south to go to 20.
Right.
And it's a brand new highway. It's all smoothed out, nice curves, and we're, doing like 90. If you're on a bike, you always want to go faster than traffic. you can't go
in between.
You don't ever want to do the speed limit with cars, because then the cars, they don't really see you.
Right.
You're either going faster or slower than speed of traffic.
That makes sense.
And so we're just, we're not doing anything dangerous. We're just in and out of cars. And so we're going down this point, 67, and the highway's completely open in front of me. I got my hand on my hip. I'm just cruising, doing like 80, 90, just cruising. He's like 3 cars behind me, just cruising. And this Corvette C8 pulls up in our fast lane. I'm to the right of the fast lane. And the C8 just creeps up. I see him in my mirror, and he's with me. And he's not lunging like he wants to race, so something's off. And so I just hit the gas to 120, and I'm gone. Just get away from the car, because it doesn't seem like something good could come out of this.
Right.
While I'm going, 2 cars come on the highway, and there's 2 open lanes to the right. For whatever the reason, one of them comes into my lane. And I'm like, okay, there's enough distance for me to brake safely. So I'm downshifting and braking, and I don't want to flip the bike, so I'm just braking kind of conservatively. So I'm braking and downshifting like any other day, no big deal. Well, I'm noticing there's a car that's staggered to the right, so I'm like thinking, okay, this is getting tight real quick, real fast. So I can't go to the right, so I'm like, my only way out is to the left. Well, just as I start to kind of commit to the left, the Corvette comes right back up and slows down again and boxes me in. Now, this car nothing makes sense.
It should have been even close.
It shouldn't have been close, because I'm like, okay, the car in front of me is on the highway, but she's not accelerating. She's just coasting. And so I'm doing 70 at the speed limit. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So the car on my left should already be gone.
Right.
Well, he stays with me and boxes me in. And so I see his headlights in my peripheral vision. I see the car. I'm trying to split the lane. The lane is tight. I'm like, this cannot be good. Boom, I feel my body hit the car. And then I wake up and I'm on the ground. Somebody's shaking me. There's a lady above me calling 911. She's crying because I don't know what she is seeing.
Right.
My buddy comes over and goes, dude, I got to call Shalee. I take my glove off, thumbprint, hear him talking to Shalee. Hey, Shalee, it's bad. You got to get out here. He crashed. I'm kind of embarrassed because I never have crashed on any of my bikes. And I've ridden a lot of years. So I'm like, okay, this is a little embarrassing, but I'm struggling to breathe. I don't realize all my ribs are broken. My liver is pretty much exploded. My pelvis has 3 fractures in it. Below my knee, the leg is just shattered. Blood everywhere, apparently. I can't feel or see it. And the lady holding me is like, just relax. And I keep asking, am I going to lose my foot? Because I can't feel it.
Right.
Am I going to lose my foot? There's no pain, and that's where God comes in. Every step of everything, there's like breadcrumbs of God. Like I always pray before I even turn my key on. Pray God, pray for a hedge of angels around me and those around me. Help me to have fun. And so a guy walks up and he's like, hey man, I've been in the Army for 4 years. I got to put a tourniquet on your leg. Okay. Feel that on my thigh? Well, that hurts. But I don't realize that I'm bleeding out and I'm dying. And I don't realize I'm dying. Ambulance gets there. They say, hey man, we got to put you on the backboard and get you out of here. They put the straps on me and they don't know my ribs are broke. But man,
oh, I know that was pain.
It hurt so bad. And it at that point I was suffocating because all the ribs are broken and my right lung is collapsing and I'm just gasping and I said, I can't breathe. We get in the back of the ambulance and that's when it all just like a jiu-jitsu, just you're ready to tap out. Everything goes black. In that moment, from where everything goes black in the ambulance, and that's the last thing I see is the ceiling of it,
right,
to where I wake up in the hospital, that window is where God was at work. I still believe that Jesus wrapped his arms around me when I was flying through the air.
You know what? And I'm glad you said that because from what I was hearing when it first happened, man, out of the blue, you crash and somebody had the instinct to get up and tourniquet that leg because if they wouldn't have did that, you would have bled out.
Yeah, yeah.
That by itself in my opinion, was those prayers of cover me.
Absolutely.
Because this one person, most people, especially this day and age, guess what they do? What? Look at this. Start recording everything that they see so they can post it on social media or whatever. They didn't do that with you. They got out and saved your life before the ambulance even showed up. Man, I remember I was 6, 7 years old and I got hit by a car. Flew up, boom, came down on the car. I don't remember. All I remember was the pain.
Yeah.
I broke my hip and everything. And you said you woke up and you saw. You remember you didn't fit. Did you feel anything? Because in that moment, like you said, you're able to open your phone. You're talking. Hey, am I gonna lose my leg? You just knew it was hard to breathe.
Yeah.
But what was the pain tolerance at this moment, or was it just like, man, I don't feel nothing? I'm just aware of the situation.
I know I'm laying on the ground, and I know where my bike is, but I'm laying on the ground, and this is not it's not good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I've been riding a long time, cheated death many times.
Right.
But I know it's not good. I know one thing is that I feel calm. I can move my arms. I'm conscious. I can see, I can hear. So my faculty, that's what I was checking, my faculty. I'm not paralyzed. So I'm like, thank God for that. And so in the moment, I was just grateful. I wanted to try to get up, but they're like, no, just lay here. Don't try to get up. But I think for the fact it's nine, because the guy even said the time, it's 9:27 is what he told the ladies. He never gave his name. But it's 9 o'clock at night and people stop to help you. Like, that's unheard of, dude, especially in Dallas. That's unheard of. You know, the Corvette took off. But when I woke up in the hospital and I could see my leg was gone, I knew, well, there goes that answer. That was answered pretty quickly.
So that's the last thing you were like. That's what you remember the most, like
when I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Well, I was sedated for 6 days. My wife, they didn't know where I was at. They just knew I was at Methodist, but they didn't know which Methodist and where I was at. They didn't have me under Antonio Perkins. They had me like a John Doe.
Really?
So
what was your friend?
Yeah.
I thought you said you was riding with somebody.
Yeah, my boy. Yeah.
He didn't give them any information.
Well, they didn't know when they had me in the OR.
Oh, okay.
They didn't give. They listed me, but they didn't list me as Antonio Perkins. And so nobody knew how to find me. Eventually, my wife found me. Candy, the Candy Man, he found out where I was at. And so my wife said she got there. The chaplain met her at the front door, and she's like, what's going on? Why is the chaplain meeting me? Is he dead? He said he's not dead, but he's in surgery. And apparently I was in surgery for 6 hours. What's crazy about it is I spoke to the operating surgeon. You know, I spoke to him after the fact, like months after. And he said, yeah, when you showed up, there was you and another guy, but it wasn't related. The guy was screaming. You know, he was in a drunk driving accident. And my orthopedic surgeon said, yeah, he was screaming his head off. And I said, okay. He goes, but the operating surgeon pulled me and my team from the hospital, from the hallway, and said, you got to get in here. This guy's dying. And I said, well, did he make it? Is he okay? He goes, man, he was talking about you, because you were about to be in cardiac arrest when you got to us. So you were pretty much on the table, pretty much dying. And so Dr. Holland and his team were working on my leg. They found where the artery was at. They pinched it off. There was a patch of skin holding my foot to my body. Once he cut that, my foot fell right off. So they were operating on my leg. The main surgeon, the operating surgeon, he said, dude, we had no time for CAT scans, x-rays. We had to cut you open old school because you didn't have any time left.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to just go right in and see what we're working with. He said, your liver had a level 4 laceration, which means it pretty much was cut in half from a rib that separated it. Your pelvis, we had to put 2 screws in the back of your pelvis. And then one of the nurses came out 6 hours later and said to my wife, it was us against the devil. We had to fight the devil to bring him back. And then I was sedated for 6 days in a coma. I came to, and I was intubated with a ventilator, so I couldn't talk. I was barely, writing to keep communication. I crashed again. My body crashed. So I was in ICU for a total of 3 weeks. The norm is 5 days. So it's unheard of to be in ICU for 3 weeks.
Long. Wow.
And so the nurse, when I went back to the hospital and talked to the people, they said, well, your body, we had a hard time keeping your body stable. Your body kept crashing. They had to put me under for another 6 days because my lung had to be collapsed. So they had to cut me back open, go through the back, separate the ribs again, and go through there. They found blood clots in my lung. They had to re-inflate it. And so it was a very, man, prayer is something that when we don't hear something immediately, we start to doubt God. But God was at work. Prayers were deposited. He had me protected when I came off the bike. He had me protected on the side of the road. He had me protected from the surgeons for 6 hours. He had me protected whenever my body was crashing and couldn't get stable the 3 weeks I was in ICU. The nurses and the doctors that were working on me for those 3 weeks, he had me. When I went to the rehabilitation center for 2 weeks, the woman that came in and did my wound care prayed with me. She was about to leave the room and she said, "Can I pray with you?" She came in, she brought communion twice. The guy driving the ambulance to go to my first appointment back at Methodist with a youth pastor. Once I got there, the lady that had to get me checked in for an appointment, she said, "Can I pray with you?"
So anybody that got any kind of doubt, you know what I'm saying, that God is real and you're witnessing right now, he's telling you exactly his own personal life experience, and it takes sometimes for people to go through that to have that true understanding. And I really hope the people listening can just hear your testimony, which is this is, man, and understand like the relationship and how important it is to have with God. I remember those 6 days that you were talking about, man, and I remember I was talking to D, and we was just scrambling, man. I was scrambling like, "Hey, what's going on? Hey, is he all right? Hey, what situation?" And I know he went up there to come see you.
He did.
And but he was even telling me then that you were in and out, and Thomas was telling you in and out, in and out. I was fighting everything. I wanted to come up there, but they was like, "Man, let him recover a little bit." But I knew it got to the point, I knew you wouldn't respond, but I was like messaging you like, hey man, you okay? I'm just hoping that you wake up and just check or something. I know you want to ask.
Yeah. Amazing testimony, bro. The very fact that in the midst of all this, you could still see the hand of God.
Oh, he was in my face. He was in my face with it, man. I mean, it was almost like, and I mean this very lightly, God was showing off in a sense that he was making it very evident that he was in everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because a lot of times, the Bible says that life is but a vapor.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
You can be here today and gone tomorrow. Literally, physically, your body wanted to shut down and die. Mm-hmm. Normally, because based on your accidents, that's just the normacy of the body. Mm-hmm. Tell me, man, since the accident, right, going from getting your leg amputated, the uncertainty of your family, your wife not knowing if you was gonna even make it, right? How has this incident changed your daily activities, what you was doing prior versus now?
You know, one thing that how has it changed my life? And I'll tell you, when I hear, the 30 for 30s on ESPN, you hear people who have been through it, you hear certain things about the story. Like when D came to visit me, we talked. And he will tell you this, there's no victims in this room.
Right.
Never once did I think of myself as a victim.
Right.
I've always tried to have a very close relationship to my Lord and Savior Jesus. You know what I mean? When I came to, when I woke up in the bed, I knew right away what this was. And I just knew it was going to be a valley of the shadow of death, a dark, treacherous, aggressive, difficult valley. In my mind, when I'm looking at this valley, I don't see the way out of it, but I just see it travel. I look to my left, and in my mind, when I'm in the room, I look to my left, and I can picture Jesus just looking at me, looking at the valley, and I know as long as he's with me, I can get through it. But I know I have a long road ahead of me. You know what I mean? How has it changed my life? Like I said, I've heard people who go through really crazy accidents and defeating death, but what you don't hear is the in-between. And the in-between is, I appreciate every morning that I wake up now, because there were so many things that were taken away from me. Like I tell you right now, when I was in the bed, people had to come and clean me. People had to wipe me. As a man,
that's humbling.
You don't know what it is like to be turned over on your side. Your ribs are broken, so that already hurts.
Right.
They have to change the bed sheets every day, and somebody has to literally physically wipe you top to bottom. They have to wipe your butt crack. They got to, and it's very embarrassing. But never once did the nurses or the doctors make me feel less than human. They didn't make me feel less than a man. I felt that way.
Right.
But until you've had somebody to come and wipe you as a grown man, dude, you don't know what it's like, dude. And you're in pain. And I have no strength at this point to hold myself up. So they're holding me. My ribs are all hurting. I'm just like praying, God, get me through this. God, get me through this. God, get me through this. And so people have to wipe me down. I lost the ability to even do that. I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't put deodorant on. Couldn't do anything for myself. Literally nothing. And so when you can't use the bathroom, you can't go poop, you can't wipe yourself, when those things are, you can't shower, you can't do anything. Once you get those things back, you appreciate them. Yeah. So every morning I can get out of my bed, put my prosthetic on, I can walk to my bathroom, I can sit down and use the bathroom if that's what I need to do. I can wipe myself. That's something that I'll never forget.
You just said something major there, man, and it's very impactful. I told you earlier, I wake up at 3:50 every morning to try to go to the gym. But it's days that I'm like, man, I don't feel like budging. I don't feel like moving. And then I look up and I watch you build yourself back up from where you were to the incident, and then trying to build yourself back up to strength and everything that you just got through explaining. Man, not only does it motivate me, but I want you to talk about people taking things for granted, the simple things such as just walking. And in any way, do you see yourself, or would you see yourself as a influencer in that matter?
You know, I don't take any credit whatsoever about where I am now. I can't take any credit for this. This is all God.
Right.
I can't take it. The fact that I'm not even angry about losing my foot. Like, I'm more upset about losing my bike.
Right.
But every day that I look at the stump, I'm not angry about it. I'm not bitter. I'm not vindictive. I should be pissed.
Right.
I should be furious. I should be bitter. I should be angry. I should be destructive. I should be taking it out on people. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I would expect people to be angry, at least be upset and feel like you got cheated. I mean, that's the way of the world, right? Yes. Oh, I'm a victim. Somebody, shouldn't I feel, don't I have every right to be mad? But I'm not. I kid you not. I'm not, I can look at this and I'm not upset. But that is not me. I can't take credit for not feeling that way. Right. I just thank God. That's a gift. So I feel like the fact that I'm okay with my leg being gone, I can smile. My prosthetic leg fell off in the movie theater with my wife the other day. The fact that we can laugh about that is evidence of a gift from God to be lighthearted about this. What's life-changing, dude? If you've if you had the ability to brush your teeth taken away from you, to take a shower, I stand up with one leg in the shower with one hand on the little fixture,
Right.
and I stop for a minute and I think, man, I'm so glad I can do this. You know, it's like there's a lot that can be difficult in my life. I mean, it takes me longer to get undressed. It takes me longer to get dressed. Okay, that's just part of it. No big deal. Yeah, are there challenges? Absolutely, there are. Is there pain? 100%. I wake up to pain every day. Is it manageable? Some days, yes. Lately, I've had this, my leg shrinks over time, which is it's supposed to do. So the stump is supposed to shrink over time. Imagine this. Imagine your foot swelling up in the middle of the night. Okay, so you get up first thing in the morning, your shoe's a little tight.
Right.
Well, throughout the day, you wear that shoe, that pressure makes your foot smaller. Right. Okay, so I wear what is called socks, like your sock on your foot. Right. You have to put on thicker socks to make up for the lost space in your shoe. That's what my life is like with my stump. So throughout the day, my stump gets smaller, right? What's going on is the calf muscle is atrophying. That's normal. That's supposed to happen. Well, my shin bone is becoming more predominant inside the socket. So what it's doing, it's rubbing a little bit on the inside. So it's it feels like somebody put a lighter on your shin. So it's very painful. You know what I mean? And so that's very new. It's manageable. But the other day I was taking a shower, came out, that hurt. I was yelling for my wife, babe, I need the wheelchair. What? I need the wheelchair. Because I need to move from point A to point B, and I can't do it with this. She brings a wheelchair in the room. I've got my arms in the doorposts, and I look at the wheelchair, and I said, no. I said, there's got to be a different way. Before I get in that wheelchair, I would have tried to do other things. That's my last ditch effort. So I said, babe, grab the other liner that has a pin. So the socket that I'm wearing is a hybrid. It's suction that I have on now, but it also is a pin. So I can put a liner on with a pin without the suction, and I can get around that way. That way there's not that pressure. I said, let me try that first. Did that. In life, there's always an easy way out. But if you don't, go ahead.
I said that's good.
You know, if everybody had a get out of jail free card, then we would be reckless in everything we do. You know what I mean? We would be reckless, and we wouldn't take ownership in certain decisions and behaviors. We wouldn't think twice about decisions and behaviors. We would be, what was that term? YOLO? Yeah. You only live once?
Everybody would be doing that.
Well, more people are ending up in jail or dead or maimed because that you only live once. Well, okay. You make a decision. Well, guess what? You're still alive, and now you're in pain. Maybe you should not think you only live once. Maybe be practical. My point is, yes, there are challenges that I face. Do I get angry about the pain at times? I get angry about the pain because it hurts. It gets frustrating, but it only lasts a little while. But that's the thing that people don't talk about, man, is how do you handle it?
Yeah.
My wife does a great job. I have the best support system in my house with my wife. And my wife had been through it, man. Our marriage was saved because of the accident. I wasn't an a-hole or anything, but my full-time job, I work for a company called Dannon. And my full-time job, I'm working 12 hours a day, 60 hours a week, and I'm not home. Either I'm working or I'm doing events, and I'm not home to be a husband to my wife. And our marriage was really, we had a lot of friction in our marriage because we weren't there for each other. You know? We were like roommates. And so this accident brought us closer together. We were able to work through our differences. And I tell people, your support system is really your life support. So the prayers from you and other people, you are a form of my life support. Like, I can't breathe. I can't drive. I can't work out. I can't walk. I can't feed myself. I can't, without people like him, like Derek, who are praying. That's my life support. I can't take ownership for this. This is an investment that you're seeing a return on. You know, I'm here. That's part of it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Let's go back to, man, there's so many questions I want to ask you.
Uh-oh.
We got
Bro.
the time.
Uh-oh.
Going back before the accident, can you think about, did God prepare me before this accident even happened? And I say that because I have a good friend with a similar story like yours. Prior to his accident, 2 weeks prior to his accident, he was getting on his kids about putting on your seatbelt. Look, when we get in a car, I always put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt, put on your seatbelt. 2 weeks later, he's driving in a car by himself. And the Holy Spirit told him, put on your seatbelt. You've been telling your kids to put on your seatbelt. You put on your seatbelt. And 10 minutes, he's like, God, you're right. He put on his seatbelt. 10 minutes later, after he put on his seatbelt, he got ran from behind. Literally should have died, but paralyzed from the waist down. That was 5 years ago. He's still paralyzed. But God prepared him prior to the accident. Had he not put on his seatbelt, it may be more than just him being paralyzed from the waist down. So in this whole process, can you think of the voice of God preparing you? Not that it was going to change anything, but prepared you for what was about to happen.
You may not like the answer, but listen to your wife.
Yeah.
Listen to your wife. That's what I can definitely say.
Man, you said something, and you are 100% right, because anytime we're about to have a life-changing moment, he speaks to us. And I know that for a fact, like you just said, he was telling them, put your seatbelt on, put your seatbelt on. Man, when I got in trouble when I was out in college and we got arrested for whatever was going on, man, the day I got arrested, God was literally the Holy Spirit was speaking loud, like we talking right now, saying, stay home.
Yeah.
Stay home. And I ignored it. I
Oh, yeah.
chose to ignore it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you ask that question, that's a really good question, because we all have that moment when something life-changing is about to happen that he tells us something.
Yeah.
And you said for you, it was your wife, but that day, did you have any feeling of something's not right?
You know, the thing is, man, is peace plays a huge role, or peace in one's person, in oneself, should play a role in decision making. If you're going to make a decision about something and it feels uneasy, if it feels like you just feel tense,
Right.
listen to that. Listen to that. But if you're going to make a decision and you have peace about it, I mean, like, you know what peace feels like. Everybody knows what that feels like.
Right.
Listen to that. And so, even though there were days that she was like, yeah, go ride the bike, or days, don't ride the bike today. There were times where I was not at peace, but I still went and rode. You know what I mean? Really just God will speak through our wives to get our attention in certain ways. But understand too, though, man, make sure that your wife is tuned into him. You know what I mean? Because, there are some wives that just tune him out, and they'll manipulate their husband.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But if your wife is tuned into God and she has that relationship, trust me, he will use that to speak to you. And God will use anybody, just believe it or not. Manipulation or not, man, God is bigger than anything that we can ever imagine.
Man, and I just want to shout out Miss Perkins, because at the end of the day, I just want to say he shouted you out before I even asked, because I was going to ask what role did she did and does play in your recovery and just helping you in general?
Everything. Man, she was my chauffeur to go from point A to point B. Anytime I needed to show up to an appointment or go anywhere, she was my chauffeur. When I first was able to make it home, our home was being renovated. Thank God for the GoFundMe. We could make things in the home accessible for the wheelchair and for me. Dude, she literally woke up in the morning when the contractors were there. She would have her coffee. She was doing things around the house to help. She would run to Home Depot to get things for the con, and she would have a Red Bull for lunch and not eat. I swear, I saw this woman not eat. It was either coffee or Red Bull, and then for dinner she would actually eat something. Aside from being my chauffeur for everywhere I had to go, she created our home to be a place of peace and healing. So I would have PT come to the house or my nurses come to the house to do wound care. And there are some people that get hands-on, hour by hour attention from doctors and nurses and then go home to a toxic environment. And your body cannot heal if your home is in turmoil.
Right.
So our home, thank God because of her, is a very healthy, recharge type of environment. You know what I'm saying? She held it down, man. She held the bills. She kept the lights on. She held it down. You know what I mean? She kept the bills paid. She had the food prepared. She took care of the dogs. Everything was done. You know what I mean? This woman who just blew me away. I've known her since 2006. We've been friends. I had to use what this urinal was. It was like a urinal type pecan, right? Because I couldn't get up and go to the bathroom. I had to use that. This woman would grab that, rinse it, pour it out, rinse it out, and give it back. Never in my life did I think this woman would touch a pecan. Ever.
Love.
You know what I mean? And she was right there doing it.
So God used
Yeah.
God used a tragic situation
Mm-hmm.
to bring healing to a broken marriage.
I mean, but hasn't God proven that all throughout the Word though? Really? I mean, hasn't He taken, before you can have a testimony, you have a test, right? I mean, you think about the life of Christ. I mean, Jesus was literally beaten, flesh ripped from his body. He literally died and was resurrected, right? God used that tragedy to cover the sins of man, right? Look at David and Bathsheba. Everybody knows about David and Bathsheba. You all know about that. You know, David was sitting on his balcony. Bathsheba, this fine Victoria's Secret model, was bathing outside. She knew what she was doing. She knew who was watching him.
I see it right now.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Victoria's Secret model was over there bathing, and David was like, I want some of that. He calls her over, sleeps with her, gets her pregnant. Her husband, who's a soldier, who's like one of David's like major generals, comes back home from the fight, literally comes home from Vietnam, you know, all bloodied up, like, hey, David, I did it for you. You know, we won these battles for you. You know, that's great. David knows Bathsheba's pregnant, but he better cover it up quick. So what does David do? He sends like, you know what, go home and go be with your wife. Go lay with your wife. You've been in battle for months and for you. Go be with your wife. No. Did you know that this general literally did not go home? Yeah. He stayed at David's front doorstep. Well, David's like, well, God dang it, this dude's got to sleep with his wife or I can't get this thing covered up. So he sends the husband back into battle and has him killed rather than face the fact of he slept with his wife and got her pregnant. You know what I mean? Yeah, and made David an incredible king. Yeah. Incredible king. But people don't realize all of his children were pretty much misfits. You think these reality shows are bad. Look at what happened to David's children. You know what I mean? Control. But my point is, God will show up in the middle of a mess and still prove that he's still God. And he's still merciful and gives grace. He gave me grace and mercy.
That's good, bro. Last question. We ask all our guests this, man.
Yeah.
So you went from a disciplined home to tragedy. Finding out your dad was murdered.
Oh, yeah.
Till having a fantasy of I don't know if you had hair back in the day, but your hair blowing in the wind.
Oh, I did have hair. My hair was as long as yours back in the day, man. I had some locks, man. I had some good hair back then. Till
experiencing this physical amputation in your body. So God using everything to restore your home. What would you tell Perkins, what would you tell Perkins one? Let me say Perkins one.
Oh, okay.
This
Can I be Perkins
Perkins
2? I might be Perkins 2 over here.
What would you tell your younger self?
I've gotten that asked a couple of times. I would definitely say don't be driven by anger. Don't make your decisions driven by emotion. Be more level-headed. Not every decision has to be made quickly. I would definitely tell my younger self, learn to know what peace is. Learn what it is to seek peace, to live in peace around you and those around you. Because I think the reward in life, whether it's occupation, whether it's seeking a helpmate in your life, whether it's seeking friendships, or just direction, learn to live in peace. Learn when to draw away from people and to be in a quiet place. And don't always expect to receive good because you put an abundance out. Don't always expect to receive that because you may not, but always try to do good.
Man, we're going to, in our closing, let's tell the people about anything you got coming up. And one thing I personally think that you should have coming out is we need a book.
That's what people keep on saying.
Man, we need a book, man. But
that would be an interesting read.
I promise you that'll be something everybody will want to see and everybody will want to read. But tell them about anything you got coming up, and before you go out, let them know exactly where they can follow you one more time.
So, you can follow me on Instagram, Antonio_XKO, Facebook, Antonio Perkins, YouTube, which, I've kind of laid off a little bit about doing the interviews. I need to get back into that.
Yes.
It's actually Inside the Life of with Antonio Perkins on YouTube. I do have a TikTok, but I'm on there every now and then. Antonio Perkins. Coming up, we have, what are we, in August?
Yeah, we got
So we're in August. We got August, September coming up. So September, I will be working with September 8th. September 8th. I'm trying to think where I'm going to be working at September 8th. Oh, a boxing event. I'm sorry. The Boxing Showcase in Houston. I'll be announcing for that on September 8th. September 9th, which is my birthday, which is crazy. I'll be 46. Never thought I'd be, 46 feels good.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about.
40s feel awesome. So September 9th, I'll be working with Coach D and Ocho for their show.
That's interesting. I didn't know you was doing that one.
Yep. So I'll be announcing for that. September 23rd, I will be with doing a kickboxing tournament, basically, a Muay Thai kickboxing tournament in Duncanville with Carlos Moreno. Remember Carlos?
Yeah,
Coach?
I definitely remember Carlos.
Yeah. The same day in Odessa is a boxing event. I'm not going to be able to fly out to that one, unfortunately. But if you're in Odessa, there's a boxing event going on. It's a boxing showcase. October 13th, I'll be working with the Brawler Boxing Nation. They're at a Denton, and I'm not sure where the location is going to be at, but October 13th. October 21st, or 20th. 20th. We'll be at Texas Live for XKO. October 21st, the next day I'll be flying out to Arizona. Rob Stucker, he's got a promotion growing out there.
I didn't even know he was doing that out there.
Yeah, so I'm going to fly out the 26th of this month to watch, to see how it's run, and then I'm planning on announcing out there October 21st. So I'm doing XKO the 20th, going to bed, flying out first thing in the morning on the 21st, going out to Arizona to work with Rob. And then sometime in November, we're doing another black tie event for XKO, like a charity black tie event. And there might be some more boxing going on in November, December, but I got to figure that out.
Man, Stucker put me on my very first amateur event, so to hear that he's still going, he's still doing something else, it makes me happy because, man, he gave me my first amateur experience. And
PFA.
Man, it was
Professional
fun.
Fighters Alliance
man,
is what it's called.
I loved it. Man, I was going to say I appreciate you, man. You took your time out. I love you. I appreciate everything that you said. Your testimony is very impactful, man, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time. and coming
Absolutely,
out.
man.
And the ones that are watching, man, I actually
Yeah.
appreciate y'all coming out too, man. We got
Absolutely.
episode 10 coming up, but
10. I made it to 10.
Hey,
I'm
no.
in the top 10.
Yeah, hey,
What?
yeah. He didn't say. You
Top
know,
10?
one of my most important people had to jump
Uh-oh.
in that top 10.
Well, I don't know. I saw James Vick on here last time, so I'm number 10. That's all right with me.
All right, but we will definitely be getting at y'all next time, man. Tune into the Perkins Project. I love y'all. See y'all next time.
Later.
Hey, that was really, really good, man. There was a lot of quotables in that.
You got to